Now I want to go further. So I go on the other side of town, and I get 650 acres this time. You spend thousands of dollars in the process of getting land to have a house on. That's ridiculous. Why don't I just buy a chunk of land, not make any profit on the land, just have everybody own it in common, and all their money goes straight to their house? We don't need infrastructure. Each one of our buildings has everything it needs, power, water, sewage right in it. We took thousands and thousands of dollars of expenses out of the equation, and it worked. Now we have a bunch of people out here, no mortgage payment, no utility bill, and they're happy, and we are ongoing. I'm not saying that I really consciously wanted to use people as guinea pigs, but I was using a life situation as a guinea pig in a sense, because it could not work out for you. People piss and moan if there's the slightest little problem, and you learn from that. If they're all complaining about it being too hot or too cold or not enough electricity or not enough water, we're going to learn and we're going to fix it. Well, this was the one where I had the two-story greenhouse. It originally had a sloped front face on it, which just basically caught too much sun. And it was too hot. No, we had ventilation and everything, but the sun, just the direct winter sun coming in at a slope 2 stories high, was just too much. Some guy wanted to buy the house. He's a rich kid who came out here to just be in the wilderness, and said, I'll pay anything for it. And I said, okay, I'll have you sign a release that it is an experimental house and you can buy it. Calls me up like a couple of months later and has me come over. Says, will you come over? I got a problem. And he took me in his kitchen, and he is a writer. And he had an heirloom typewriter out on the kitchen table working. And the typewriter was melting. The plastic was running. I learned that this is powerful. You know, I want to learn to control it. You know, I'm just glad I didn't kill anybody, you know, fry a baby or something. You know, fuck.
It takes clients to develop ideas in building. You can't figure out all your ideas on your own one house. You need many houses to do it on. You can't afford to build many houses, so you do need clients.
And people take issue with him because in the early days he did it badly. The houses leaked, they were hot, they looked like they landed from Mars or another planet.
Most of the time, you'll get good clients that realize that it's experimental what you're doing, and some things may not work, or some things could be better. Then you get the occasional client who thinks, oh, it's experimental, but everything must work perfectly because that's how houses are. And then those people, they're disappointed, and sometimes they sue.
When you're doing something like running sewage through the living room and building a building out of garbage, if you really do seriously fuck up, it's 10 times as bad. And so, you know, if I had a roof leak, it was lawsuit. If I, you know, had a smell in a bathroom, it was lawsuit. If I had a house that was 60 degrees rather than 70, it was lawsuit.
The powers that be in the architecture world and in the planning world, you know, they just can't see any other way than the way they've got established. And that's how the board of architects basically crammed down his throat that no, there's only one way to do an architectural contract, and this is it. And if you can't do that, then you can't be an architect.
the architects board asked me to bring charges against Mike Reynolds. So everything that he was doing fell outside the scope of what New Mexico would consider legal construction.
She said, basically, they're going to nitpick you to death for the rest of your life because of what you're doing.
Standardized design and construction is so important because it means safety.
I was breaking rules and laws right and left. There's no question about it.
It's not just the design, but it was actually the building of these earthships that was a problem.
Which, granted, he wasn't playing by the fucking rules. Rules are made to be broken.
I was twisting the law to try to get sustainable housing out there, folks.
The worst outcome that could have ever been for Mike was he'd lose his license, and he did.
Every time we stuck our head out of the foxhole, we're getting the fucking face shot off. And the county writes me a letter saying that it has come to our attention that you have developed 3 communities which may be in violation of one or more of the aforementioned regulations. And here I was breaking every law in the book, and I said, well, Fred Navarez said I can do that. Well, he's dead. Who the fuck are you?
Suddenly, there was a change of planning regime, and within a few weeks' time, everything started to go really badly for the company and for the community.
They had a big notebook like this thick, even thicker than this, Reynolds subdivision violations. Subdivision law stated that to convey property, you have to have power, water, sewage. You have to have everybody owning their specific piece of land. You have to prove that you can provide all these utilities to it. You have to put in roads. You have to do all of these super expensive things to qualify as a subdivision.
When I was hired to be planning director in 1995, that was one of the first charges they gave me, was to make sure that everybody lived by the same rules. They didn't put any roadways in. There's no service, no water. They didn't put anything in. And the state legislature at that time just said, okay, enough is enough. We filed 5 subdivision actions at the same time.
He came out with his code enforcers with guns on. I mean, they shut us down. So I got busted on building, architecture, and subdivision all at the same time. I busted my ass for like 10 years to be an architect, and it was taken away from me. I mean, there's no way that's not going to shake you up to some extent in terms of questioning your own competence and abilities. And are you doing the right thing?
We fired the crews, and we're down to 2 or 3 people. And
Job sites were shut down, and people that were waiting to build, their permits were denied, even though the county had already cashed their checks.
spirits fell low, and people moved out, and there wasn't a lot of work, and you felt like the county was disapproving of what you were doing, even though you were trying to do something good for yourself.
Even logic failed at that point to some extent, because there were so many things against me. I'm looking at like I've lost my method of livelihood, I've lost my respect, I've lost my credentials. Basically, I had lost everything. What do I do?
When people ask you what your heroes are or who your people that influenced you or impressed you, one of the first ones I ever say is Noah, of course.
He built a boat, a wooden boat, giant wooden boat out in the middle of the desert, and there was no sea around, and he was building a boat, and they were calling him a fool. But he saw something coming.
He didn't draw for 2 years. You know, he didn't draw a house design, or he wasn't able to think about any details or how to, you know, improve upon the buildings. So, yeah, he was just occupied by law.
Just the atmosphere around the entire company was, everything was in question.
At this point, I'm assessing my life and my situation. Do I want to spend the next decade proving these people wrong on an ego trip? Or do I want to, however I can, prove sustainable housing and building? I went in with my tail between my legs. I said, what do you want me to do? And they said, be a subdivision.
To make the Greater World a legal subdivision, Mike had to develop it in phases and then have the county come in and inspect every phase.
This is the application for phase 3 and 4 to be a subdivision. We have to provide 14 copies of this. Archaeologists had to walk the land and look for arrowheads. That cost $20,000. And all they did was walk around and pick up arrowheads. Engineers had to engineer the terrain and make diagrams and drawings that nobody ever uses. That was $14,000. Just endless horse shit. We have a person who could not see any bigger than the rule book. And I think that's the issue that we have before us right now on this planet. We got lots of people that can't see any bigger than the rule book. And beyond the rule book is global warming.
The amount of expense and time, I mean, it was years of his life and other people's.
It took us 7 years to completely get the entire development open again.
Yes. Yes. What up, Mike?
Hubba, hubba, hubba. All of a sudden, I went from a turd in the punch bowl to, you know, a flying fish.
They now see him as a shining example of how to create a subdivision in Taos County.
Jumped through all the hoops and became a legal subdivision, selling acres of land and lots and building a repetitive little generic house. For a period of time there, I was not exploring. I was not evolving. I was taking what I had learned to that date, and it's because it could not work out for you. People piss and moan if there's the slightest little problem, and you learn from that. If they're all complaining about it being too hot or too cold or not enough electricity or not enough water, we're going to learn and we're going to fix it. Now I want to go further. So I go on the other side of town and I get 650 acres this time. You spend thousands of dollars in the process of getting land to have a house on. That's ridiculous. Why don't I just buy a chunk of land?
Now we have a bunch of people out here, no mortgage payment, no utility bill, and they're happy, and we are ongoing.
I'm not saying that I really consciously wanted to use people as guinea pigs, but I was using a life situation as a guinea pig in a sense. Not make any profit on the land, just have everybody own it in common, and all their money goes straight to their house. We don't need infrastructure. Each one of our buildings has everything it needs, power, water, sewage right in it. We took thousands and thousands of dollars of expenses out of the equation, and it worked. Well, this was the one where I had the 2-story greenhouse. It originally had a sloped front face on it, which just basically caught too much sun. And it was too hot.